So in the next section, we're going to talk about branding your business. It's been a bit of a personal journey for me to really understand branding. It's not something that I was really educated in, but it becomes sort of part of your entrepreneurial journey. So the first thing I would mention is that your brand is a derivative, it's a function of your missions and your values, kind of what's important to you as an organization. Super important. So um, it's not necessarily that you have to have this perfect mission statement when you start a company, but as your business evolves, you stand for something. Those are your core values, that's your mission, and then your brand falls out from there. There are a couple of examples here of weak mission and value statements. And I think it's good to compare and contrast sort of weak and strong, and gives you an idea of what works and what doesn't. To me, a weak a weak mission or value statement would be to make the world a better place. Or I've seen these too. Just sort of these generic statements. It falls in euphemistic statements or bumper sticker things. It's just too generic in general. The next one would be to conquer the world, which is it's ambitious, but it's not realistic. It's big, but it's not realistic. And I also don't know what that actually means as a reader. So remember, again, when you're building your brand, you're trying to set up what you stand for, and almost like in a cake, you're making the cake where the frosting becomes your strategy and your execution, but your brand and your culture is the cake itself. We want that to be real good. Another sort of brand statement or mission statement that I think is weak is to inspire people with pizza. Um, that's a funny one. I don't really know what that one means either, but it's sort of off, right? It doesn't make sense. And the next one is to make money. It's just uninspiring. There's nothing there. Now, keep in mind before we go on to the strong mission and value statements, um, you don't really see ones that are that vulgar or that bad, but you definitely see ones that are in the neighborhood of bad. And you got to think to yourself, does that really motivate anybody? Does it even motivate you? Because you want every organization to stand for something, right? Something specific, something that people can buy into. These are stronger mission and value statements: to be the best low cost lawn service provider in town X and to offer customer service. It's simple, it's doable, it's not necessarily changing the world, but if you are hiring an employee in that town, it could mean something to them. To provide great tasting coffee at a reasonable price. It's simple again, it's actionable. I guess the level to which it would be inspiring depends upon your love of coffee, but it's something that people could buy into. And again, it's tangible. It actually means something. It's not so broad that it doesn't have any meaning. To prepare kids for kindergarten in a happy and healthy environment. Of the ones we came up with, I like this one best actually because it's nice. If I'm an employee, if I'm a customer, if I'm me running the business, it's positive. It's something I can do. It's contained, and it's simple. I really like that one. To become the largest producer of XYZ widget in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Um, Better than probably some of our bad ones. It's not necessarily the best one we have, but it's realistic, and there's some inspiration in it. Brand is how others think of you. Values are things you have inside of you. Brand is how other people think of you. So it's, again, the layered cake. We know who we are, we have values, we have mission, and then we put brand on side of that. Those should relate directly together. If there's any cognitive dissonance, if there's a disagreement, if those conflict, things aren't going to work. It all has to tie together. You even think about some people who are popular on social media. Even though you may object to their values, You may object to their brand. You may object to their products. They're usually in alignment. So all sales and marketing should roll off of and up to and around the brand. You want to determine how you're going to be perceived. So again, this is how other people think of you. The tighter the brand, the better everything's going to be. So some examples here, which I do want to go through. Informal versus formal. When I'm running a law firm, do I want to be perceived as informal or formal? And I would say that's not that obvious. So again, it goes to your value. Are you sort of an informal entrepreneurial lawyer who's helping startups? Well, that's who you are. You're sort of an informal lawyer. You're off the cuff. You're more natural. You're more real. Your brand, therefore, is going to be more informal. And that's going to manifest itself in lots of ways. And eventually, that's going to lead to a sales message. There's one lawyer in a very famous area of the country for entrepreneurship that used to have a t-shirt like, we're not your, I think it was, you're not your brother-in-law's law firm or something like that. It was like this cool t-shirt or whatever. And he was sort of an informal lawyer. This message was for entrepreneurs. And I looked at that and I thought, that's pretty clever, because his target were young entrepreneurs, and it really worked. So even though you would think of law firms as necessarily being formal, it's not true. It depends upon what your values are and what your brand is. Are you expensive? Are you inexpensive? This cascades through everything. The font you use, the brochures you use, if you use brochures, your website, obviously your pricing, but it is all part of values and brand. Are you simple? Are you complex? When I started SageWorks, we were all for simplifying financial statements. So our font was Helvetica. Our user experience was very carefully orchestrated to be simple. That's just what we did. If we were selling, I don't know, Tesla cars, or we were selling Ferraris or whatever, I don't know if we'd be simple. Those cars might not be simple. I really don't know. Are you spontaneous? Are you planned? Is your stuff crowded? Are you simple? Are you plain, or are you colorful? Once again, it all builds from who you are. You know who you are. What's your value set, to how others are going to perceive you. Those have to align. And then every sales and marketing thing that you do should fill in back down through that. That section is hard to teach, really. But if you think about the best brands in the world, they get that right. Just as a quick example before we go to the next section, Apple Computer. I don't know how people perceive them now. And I was never an Apple devotee until my kid got into it, and now everything I use is Apple. But when I think of Apple, I think about them, and I don't think about them very much. You think of simple design, elegance, probably a little bit more expensive. Used to be easy to use. It's not easy to use anymore. But there's sort of like a simplified approach, but elegant and tasteful. That's what I used to think of when I think of Apple, or I don't know how people think of it. But every company has this brand, all stemming from who they really are.